Here's Papa.
Hello, 45 Alpha Charlie Papa channel, and today I bring you a masterpiece, a Smith & Wesson K22 masterpiece. Now this is the companion to the K32 and the K38, all K-frame revolvers from Smith & Wesson. Now this video was supposed to be on the new Ruger Wrangler. I had saved up enough money to pick up a Ruger Wrangler and a box of ammo, and I was going to do a review on this, and this just fell into my lap, and I couldn't pass up the deal. These guns are out there. You can find them, but they're hard to come by. They're typically in family collections. The people who have them typically do shoot them or have them in a collection, and they never get rid of them. It's always grandpa's gun. They're just very hard to find. In fact, Smith & Wesson still makes a Model 1722 masterpiece. To this day. You can buy a new one in the box. They are listed on their website. You can buy one. They're about $950. When you find these used on the market, they're typically $700 and up, depending on what it is. So I got a really good deal on this. I'm very happy to be the caretaker of this particular pistol. And let's go over some of the history of the K22s and what became the Model 17. Late 20s, target shooters, hunters were clamoring to Smith & Wesson that they were looking for a 22 revolver in a K-frame. They just thought the size was perfect for it. It would lend itself really well to target shooting, well for outdoorsmen to go trapping or small game hunting, woods gun, whatnot. They really were looking for it. And in 1930, Smith & Wesson introduced the K22 Outdoorsman. Now, if you know a little bit of history, 1930 was the beginning of the Depression. So Smith & Wesson came out with a $35 high-end revolver in 22 right at the beginning of the Depression. Sounds counterintuitive, but they sold fairly well. Over the next 9 years, they sold 17,000 units. During the Depression era, that was doing fairly well. In fact, well enough that in 1940 they came out with the second generation of this, which was considered the K22 masterpiece, because Smith & Wesson figured they had a masterpiece on their hands. Now, if you come across a 1940 K22 masterpiece, those are very, very limited number. They only made about 1,000 of those guns. So if you come across one, they're usually very sought after by Smith & Wesson collectors. They typically go for very high dollars. Now, this particular one is a post-World War II model. 1940 was the last year that they made anything for the civilian market during World War II. They were busy filling wartime contracts, and any civilian guns that they were making kind of fell to the wayside. So 1946, they redesigned this and came out with the K22 masterpiece, and it was very sought after. Now, according to the ad I've got on here, you had to get on a waiting list to get one. They were really popular. A lot of guys were looking for them, especially as they came back from the war. Again, I know in 1940 they were around $40. I'm sure right around that 1950 they were probably in that $40, $45 range, which at the time was still a lot of money. One of the major things that you see on here is they added the rib to the top of the barrel here. And the reason for that, and if you look on here, is it's a companion to the K32 and the K38. What they found during the Depression, one of their main customers was civilian law enforcement and military. They were buying these up as trainers. And when they came back out with this after the war, they wanted this gun to feel like the 38, or feel like the 32. It's got the same balance. It's got the same weight. It's got the same number of shots. Everything was the same so that they could train recruits on these 22s. And then when they got into the field and started carrying their 38s or 32s, they were exactly the same. The manual of arms was the same. The feel was the same. The only difference was a little bit more recoil. You know, that sameness was also revered by target shooters. Many of the target shooters back in that time were competing in pistol competitions, and the Smith & Wesson held several different records, especially the 22, for pistol competitions, but they were competing in a 22 division or a rimfire division. They were also competing in a centerfire division, and then you had your big bore division. So to have a 22 and a K-frame weigh exactly the same amount of shots, the balance was the same. The only difference was recoil, as opposed to, you know, when you switched over and started shooting your 38 or your 32, the manual of arms was the same. Having that consistency as a target shooter between at least two different competitions was key, and they really liked that particular feature. Normally when they went to big bore, although Smith & Wesson did have a 45 ACP revolver, many of them would switch over to a 1911 because that's kind of what they had used when they were in the military. But anyway, this one is a 1948 production according to the serial number, but it's hiding a little surprise inside. So let's go ahead and take it apart and let's take a look. And here was the surprise. The gentleman I bought it from, this was his dad's pistol. And unknown to the gentleman who I got this from, his dad dated and signed his purchase. So we know that this gun was purchased 5/1 of 1950, which is kind of cool. You know, you open these up and you find this stuff on, you know, engraved inside the grips. You know that this was a cherished item for this particular person. They really were happy that they had purchased this pistol. I know that the original owner used to use this down at the dump and shoot rats with it. As we got into the pistol a little further, you can see the beautiful lock work, you know, that was in this. And I took this completely down, got her all cleaned up. It was kind of a gummy mess in there. You know, some of the oils from back in the 50s and 60s when he was using this had kind of congealed and gelled up. But cleaned up really nice. There was a little surface rust on it, little oil, little 4/0 steel wool. This pistol really cleaned up very nice. As you can see here, you know, not only did I get the pistol, but I got the original box. All the numbers are matching, even the numbers on the grips. It came with its sight adjustment tool and a little cleaning rod. Okay, we are out at the range here, and we're taking a few shots with this wonderful, beautiful little revolver, and it is a dream to shoot. Now, I wasn't shooting my best this particular day, but the revolver ran flawless. And the nice thing with revolvers like this is that you can shoot 22 shorts through it. Being a revolver, you can also shoot snake shot through it. There's all kinds of different applications that you can use. Now, as I said, I wasn't shooting the best these days. As you can see from this target, these were the first 6 shots out of the gun. Not too bad. This was at 10 yards. I know I can shoot smaller groups. I just wasn't shooting very well that day. But as we continued to shoot it, you know, I can't say enough about how well this pistol is engineered. Just that old world craftsmanship from Smith & Wesson. You know, the trigger is very, very smooth on it. The single action, the break is extremely crisp and short. It's just a wonderful little target gun, wonderful little woods gun. Be great for varmints and doing some small game hunting with. Let's get back to the bench and take a look at this old girl. All right, we are back from the range, and just take a look at the classic lines on this pistol. It is just classic Smith & Wesson. Beautiful fit and finish, old world craftsmanship. Just a wonderful, beautiful gun. The bluing on this is probably right around 95%. It is that matte blue that they came out with after the war. They were trying to get these things out to shooters after the war, and there was a big demand for them. So they didn't spend as much time with the finishing and polishing of the blue on this. Now, the pre-war guns would have had a very high gloss blue on it, but I like the blue on this particular gun. But let's take a little closer look at some of the features on this that make it iconic and that the collectors really love. All right, a few more glamour shots of this wonderful pistol. Now let's just kind of take a look around it. Some of the stuff that makes it desirable, some of the stuff that collectors really like to look for when they're looking for these pistols. Having the original box is a plus. Having the original accoutrements, the sight adjustment tool here, and the cleaning rod that goes along with it. Now there are instructions on the back side of the box to tell you how to operate it, so I'm not 100% sure if there was actually an owner's manual that went along with that. Speaking to the old world craftsmanship of this particular pistol, let's take a little closer look here. You can really get into some of the minutia of these particular pistols, and one of the things collectors look for and kind of date the gun, you've got a 90-year history of this particular pistol. After the war, they put this rib on here so they can make it the same weight as the 38s and 32s. But if you notice here, this rib is a little wider here, and it tapers narrower at the front sight. So that was something that they did for a little while and speaks to the old world craftsmanship that you're finding in this particular example. About 1955, they changed this. You still have the rib. They still have the rib to this day, but it's a straight rib. It's not a tapered rib. Other things you will find is we do have the pin barrel, and as we move forward, the pinned front sight. Now you've got some honest wear here. You've got a little holster wear there at the muzzle. As we come down here, you've got your drag line here from your cylinder stop. You've got the 4-line address here, the Made in the USA Smith & Wesson. You also got what is a 5-screw model. Now you can see 3 screws here. You've got 1, 2, and 3. There is another screw that sits behind these grips, and you've got a screw right behind right in front of the trigger guard. You've got original grips that are in really good shape, and they are serial numbered to the gun, so they do match. You got your color case hardened trigger and hammer, your target sight, adjustable. And as you can see, this is a 6-shot model, and it's got the recessed chambers. Now, recessed chambers came about at the original K22, and Smith & Wesson ended up introducing that to the rest of the line of their pistols. And the reason that they came about with these recessed chambers, at least for the 22, was that when they were developing this back in the late 20s, the early high-velocity 22 long rifle rounds that were being manufactured were a brass or a copper case instead of brass. And there was a high incidence of case head separations and case head blowouts on those. So by recessing the chamber, you were able to basically support the whole case and had a lower incidence of blowouts and case head separations. And if you did get that, you wouldn't have hot gases shooting out the side of the revolver or shrapnel shooting out the side of the revolver and maybe hitting somebody standing next to the gun. Now, there is a question that has been asked by reviewers over the years, why they made this in a 6-shot model and not a 10-shot model like they did later on in production. I've talked about this being a training pistol and being the same in a target pistol, so it had the same shots in the 22 as it did in the big boy, and competitors like that. Manual of arms was the same. They really liked that, but it really comes down to the simple fact that they were downsizing a K-frame to take a 22. When you're doing something like that and you're not sure what the market's going to be, you change as few parts as possible. So yes, the cylinder is bored with smaller chambers in it for the 22. However, the outside dimension is exactly the same. So you're just changing some internal dimensions when you're drilling out those cylinders. Put a 22 barrel on it. That's no big deal. And all of your clockwork, all your timing, everything inside the pistol pretty much remains the same as it is in the 38 and 32 caliber guns. You may change the firing pin orientation on the gun, I think there's a little change in the hammer, but the fewer parts you have to change, the better off you are in a manufacturing end. When this gets introduced at the beginning of the Great Depression, the fact that this was so similar to the other guns and there were very few other parts that had to be interchanged or changed out is a reason why we still have these today. They were still making 38s, they were still making 32s, and to make the 22, it didn't take a whole lot of changes to do so. But this is 45 Alpha Charlie Papa channel, and I just thought I'd bring out my new to me K22 Smith & Wesson masterpiece, and I am out.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.